Well, hello, I'm Harold Munro, editor-in-chief at the Vancouver Sun. Joining me, Katie DeRosa, our bureau chief out there in Victoria. Happy New Year, Katie.
Hi, Harold. Happy New Year. Glad to be, back on the politics coverage.
Yeah, well, you've been back at it now for a week, and you had a story that was very buzzy and got a lot of attention last week around the homeowners grant. And with the assessments coming out, of course, the government has to tell us where they're going to set the homeowners grant. And where is that this year, and what were you writing about?
Yeah, so I mean, this year the homeowners grant, the threshold is 2.15 million. So that's basically if you own a home that's assessed at 2.15 million or less, you qualify for the homeowners grant, which is basically a chunk that comes off your property tax bill every year. So for a single family homeowner, that would be between $550 and $750 back. And so that has been around for decades. It was actually brought in by WAC Bennett. So it's something that people are used to getting. But I think as financial times get tougher, especially for people who can't even get into the property market, can't even get a home. There's a discussion about should we change the homeowners grant? Should it be income tested, or should we rethink how it works? So one of the real estate consultants I spoke to, Michael Geller, he has been talking about this for several years, and he said that the homeowners get a larger tax break than say renters, for example. The renters rebate that the government announced last year and that will come into effect on this tax year. So any renter who files their taxes this year will get up to a $400 credit back on their taxes because based on their rent. That is income tested. So that the amount that you get back as a renter is at the maximum if you make 60,000 or less a year household income, but between 60,000 and 80,000 you'll get less than 400. You'll get like a prorated amount. So the question is, why is a benefit for renters based on income, but for a homeowner their home could be, paid off. They could be mortgage free, or they could be making quite a solid income, a hefty income, and still get the homeowners grant. So the question is, should we find a way to make it more equitable? However, arguments I've heard on the other side is that homeowners pay property taxes and renters don't. So that's an argument for, well, that's why we give a grant to homeowners. Finance Minister Katrina Conroy basically gave no indication there's plans for the government to change anything with the grant. So especially we're in an election year, it probably would be very politically unpopular to take away a benefit from homeowners, especially with rising interest rates.
And it's not just a few homeowners, right? At that threshold, I think it's somewhere around 90%. Is that
Yeah,
of people
yes,
get it?
exactly. 92% of homeowners get it.
82%?
Nine ninety
Okay.
two, 92, yeah.
92%. Okay.
Yeah.
And is that where they try to keep it? Is like around that 92% figure?
They do, yeah. So that's why every year we've actually seen the threshold rise. So a few years ago, two years ago, it was in the 1.7 million, and it's gone up. The threshold for how much your home is worth to be able to qualify has gone up. So, but one of the points that Michael Geller made is that $2.1 million threshold is the same across the province. So in Vancouver, a single family home, just an average single family home might be 2.1 million, but in a smaller community like Castlegar or Prince George, 2.1 million is probably the top end, the one of a luxurious home. So that person in that house is getting the same grant as someone elsewhere. So that is, there's an argument from Michael Geller about perhaps making a regional threshold that reflects property values in those areas.
Okay. You mentioned that this goes back like 60, 70 years or more to WAC Bennett. And as I understand it, the rationale for bringing it in the first place was to try to encourage home ownership, right? To try and get people to buy homes, because the theory being there's more stability if people own their homes as opposed to rent. But now I think it's there are a lot of people who would like to own homes who
Mm.
can't afford, so that doesn't apply necessarily.
Yeah, I think, and that's one of the arguments is that the baseline, the rationale for bringing this in, things have changed, and the housing landscape has changed. So is it time to take a look at it and perhaps maybe not completely scrap it, but tweak it? And so again, that is an argument, but it doesn't seem like the government has any reception, has given any reception to that argument. So I don't think we'll see any changes, but it's worth having the conversation, worth raising the debate as to if this program is working. And again, certainly a lot of homeowners will say, well, my interest rates have gone up. I'm having trouble, just covering my mortgage. And so the property tax break is helpful. And of course, for people over 55, they can defer their property taxes. So that's also an option for people. People with dependents, people with disabilities can defer their property taxes. So there are mechanisms available to help people with those tax bills.
Right. I guess for people with secondary suites, it could be argued that renters benefit perhaps modestly indirectly from the homeowner's grant, in that it allows the people to perhaps pass that on in some manner to the
Well, I
renters.
mean, Andy Yan, who I talked to, who's always, very knowledgeable, he
Right.
said, well, what we don't know that savings is passed on, right? Like if
Right.
you
We
have a
don't know.
tenant, we don't know that the savings is passed along at all. So again, maybe should that be a requirement that if you have a basement suite, you have to give some of the proportion back to your tenants? So that's sort of a question that Andy Yan raises is are any of these savings being passed on to tenants in a single family home?
Right. I mean, for an individual person, it's not a lot of money, but I imagine, what is the budget for the province for the homeowner's grant?
It's at 90 million dollars. Or no, sorry, no, 900 million. So that's another point that critics have raised, is that the homeowners grant costs the province almost $1 billion a year, but
Mm,
by comparison, the renters rebate is expected to cost around $30 million. So again, or sorry, again, I'm mixing 300 million. I'm
100 million.
forgetting to add
Okay.
my zeros. So it's a very different amount that the government is spending on renters compared to homeowners.
Interesting. Well, and the renter's rebate, $400 over the course of a year, given the size of rents, is not a lot of money either, is it? $400. That's what,
Right.
$20,
$30,
$30 a month.
$33 a month. Yeah,
Right. When you're paying $1,500 to $2,000 a month in rent, I guess it doesn't go very far.
exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Well, other story that you broke was around the Surrey policing and a poll. We should say that it was paid for by Surrey taxpayers, and a bunch of the questions were clearly questions that the city was using to try to figure out how they're going to get a message across to taxpayers that this transition is costing more than the province is letting on. So that this fight continues. But what did we learn anything from the poll, Katie?
I mean, that's a good question. I think that, the poll showed that initially about 46% of those surveyed supported keeping the RCMP, and about 30% wanted to see the transition completed to the Surrey Police Service. But then as people were asked questions, many of which were, admittedly shaped by Surrey staff, Surrey communication staff. Again, many of them really echoed comments that Mayor Locke had made in the past, like, for example, should Surrey get more respect from the province? Should the province cover the balance of, what the transition will cost over and above what Surrey's willing to pay? So, it was almost like this poll, this
Right.
survey was trying to test the message to see whether it resonates with residents. And then after residents were asked all these questions, and do you agree with the statement, yes or no, the percentage actually rose to closer to 62% of people who supported the RCMP. So from Surrey's perspective, they might say, well, these messages are having an impact. if we are able to get across that the province is downloading unfair costs onto Surrey taxpayers, then you blame the province if your property tax goes up into double digits, which Mayor Locke is saying is going to happen. So really, this kind of is another prong of the information advertising campaign that Surrey is spending $500,000 on. People have seen billboards, they've gotten flyers at their door talking about all these additional costs that Surrey says will be incurred if they have to transition to the municipal force. So it's all basically this information war and this is the sort of latest tactic of Surrey to push back against the province.
Of course, the province disagrees with the city's numbers and the city disagrees with the province numbers, but we've never been given a clear window into what the actual numbers are, right? Because there's still a bunch of stuff that's subject to a confidentiality agreement on both sides.
I mean, that's right. And exactly the breakdown for, Surrey is saying it's going to cost upwards of more than 400 million over 10 years. But the province disputes that. They are saying it's going to be more like 300 million. So it's the numbers are up in question. We still haven't seen a budget in terms of the policing in Surrey. Mayor Locke, hasn't sort of said when that's going to come. So there's a lot of unknowns. And again, the province is committed to, they have their administrator on the Surrey Police Board, Mike Cyr, who's supposed to be pushing things along. And so no sign of the province backing down. But again, there's the court case that this Surrey is trying to stop the transition through the courts. We don't know what the next step is going to be, if there's going to be sort of a ruling or, the province had responded to that lawsuit, but who knows if the lawsuit is going to succeed. So there's a lot more to come in this battle.
Well, and of course, it's an election year, and there's a lot of seats at stake in Surrey for the NDP, isn't? I'm not sure how many they occupy, but it's several out of.
Yeah, so 7 of the 9 seats in Surrey are held by the NDP. Many of them are swing seats that were swing ridings that were taken by the NDP during the 2020 election when the former BC Liberals lost a lot of ground. But now there's actually going to be another seat in Surrey. So there's going to be a 10th seat with a riding redistribution. So there's the obviously BC Conservatives are on the scene. They're the unofficial party now, and John Rustad, the leader, has been really trying to gain inroads among more conservative-leaning, right-leaning voters. And so policing is obviously going to be a big issue that maybe the Conservatives will try and gain some votes. So yeah, Surrey is definitely a battleground for the NDP, and they don't want to be seen as pissing any Surrey residents off before the election.
Right. So even if Mayor Locke loses the battle on the policing decision, she's maybe going to turn this into an election issue come the fall.
It definitely will be. And I asked her that, and she says there's no doubt this is going to be on Surrey voters' minds as they come to the provincial election. She's a former MLA herself, so she knows how it works. And sure. Yeah, it's definitely. And so I think it is going to be interesting to gauge whether these flyers and whether these billboards are going to sway public opinion. But I definitely don't think it'll sway Mike Farnworth's opinion. He's pretty firm on his message has been pretty straight that Surrey's got to accept the transition, and Kate brought in legislation to do that. So I definitely think we'll have to see how quickly the court case moves and whether that will give us any indication of what the next steps will be.
All right. Well, we're only a week in, Katie, and things are already heating up in this election year, as we might expect. So yeah.
Yeah, everything's in the context of the election now. So I think that is the big frame of reference. I mean, we've got the budget coming up in February. It's going to be an election budget. I'm sure there's going to be lots of goodies for people, and yeah, we could talk about that during our next chat.
Absolutely. Okay. See you next week, Katie. Thank you.
Thanks, Harold.